How are
Well,
you?
welcome everyone. We are streaming live, and I'd like to welcome you all to the August event. So the Global Summit series, the Global Summit events, we got together and we decided we wanted to have topics that we cared about, that were important to us, and to become better speakers on those topics. And so as a group, we all decided that we wanted to speak about certain things that we either grew through or were important to us in life, and it brought us all together. So all of this is about becoming better in who we are, about growing, about healing, and then helping others in this journey. So each month we rotate in topics. The topics are selected from the group, from the Global Summit members, and they move forward a topic that's of personal interest to them, something that's of passion to them. And this month we are speaking on the topic of drug addiction and overdose, because on the 30th of this month, in 2 days' time, it's a UN National Awareness Day or Global Awareness Day for that topic. We try to pick topics that are of personal interest, personal value, but of global importance. So that's why we're speaking about these different events, different topics. And so coming up in the future, we'll have discussions on education next month in September. It's kind of like the back to school time. The next month we'll have two topics. One is going to be International Kindness Day, and we've got potentially another topic that'll be on ending child abuse. It'll be a raising awareness in that area. Coming up on October, we'll have a 24-hour event based around mental health and mental wellness. We're focusing on positive psychology, and the term we're using is mental wealth. And then in December, we're going to have our party, our social. Every Sunday, we have a social event. So we get together and we kind of have some fun and grow in our skill sets. So thank you. So this topic this month is about the overdose awareness. And we're doing a roundtable on helping the people, the caretakers of the addicts. So that's where we're at. And this is Will's, he has put together this event. He's brought it together, and so I'd like to pass it over to him and thank him for all of his hard work, and then all of the hard work for the rest of you that put this together. So thank you, Will, and take it away.
Good. Hello, everyone. Well, thanks for joining us today on our roundtable discussion about addiction and overdose, the unfortunate mess that it can leave behind. My name's Will Skeets, and my partner passed away from his addiction to alcohol in 2020, and therefore I found myself in a situation of not really being able to find true assistance or which way to direct myself as I grew out of what had been a 20-year addiction and living with somebody. So that's my background, and today on our panel we have Sue, Alec, Mahib, Taquiti, Steve, Lisa Marie Brown, and Yvette. So I'm going to ask each person to introduce themselves. So I think Sue, if you would like to start.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sue Doherty, and I am a passion and fulfillment coach. And I am here today because I have experience with this topic that I want to share and share my healing and recovery, and hope that it helps coaches and helps other people who may be in the same spot or not quite as far along in the process.
Thank you, Sue. Alec, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Will. My name's Alec, and I can be contacted through desiredstate@mail.com. My main area of work is with trauma, and as we know, trauma often leads to substance misuse for numbing and coping. And I like to think that I'm able to offer people a space to process their unusual or uncomfortable into their acceptable. Thank you.
And Mahib, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Mohib. I'm the happiness coach. I work with individuals with emotional literacy, emotional intelligence, and self-awareness to help them understand where their pain and sufferings are coming from and how they can manage themselves going through those tough times. Thank you.
Taquiti, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. My name is Taquiti Cross. I'm from the United States. I have been a recovering person, recovered for 30 years. I come from a long line of addicts. My family has all been addicts. I am an emotional empowerment coach. I help people deal with all kind of emotional trauma to live their life in their greatest life and become the diamond of their life.
And we have Lisa Marie Brown.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Marie. I hail from Trinidad and Tobago, which is in the Caribbean. I am a transitional life coach, helping you set your goals to get things done. And today, my input in our summit is based on me currently living with an alcoholic and the coping mechanisms I've put into place and how boundaries and how it's affected me. Thank you.
And we have Yvette. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Yvette. I was a codependent of methamphetamine addict for so long, but recovered now. I'm presently a mental health and wellness advocate, having gone through so much. And then I'm also a guide in transformative life strategies, adversity management, and self-management, a life coach and CBT practitioner. Especially, I am interested with the youth, in especially teaching them self-awareness. Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to you, Will.
And we have a special guest joining us today, Shelley Rogerson. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm from Canada, and I am very excited to be here. Thank you. I am a recovering alcoholic. I just celebrated 8 years last week. Thank you. Yeah, it was a big accomplishment. And I am a co-founder of a program and a book series called Blue Talks. Blue stands for Business, Life, and Universe. And it's a platform for people to share their stories and business advice, universe. So we have lots of people talking about mental health, addictions, healing modalities. So yeah, it's we're just getting back from holidays and on the road lots. So yeah, I'm loving it. Thank you.
And we have another panelist. We have Marcella Onyx. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, wherever you are in the world. So just very happy to be here. My work offline is more into life, relationship, and intimacy, but I'm more than happy to be here supporting the event today. Thank you.
Right. So thank you to all of those that are joining us on Zoom. Oh, sorry, I forgot to introduce Tommy T. Would you like to introduce yourself and why you're on the panel today?
Hi there. Yeah, I'm a recovery coach, amongst other things. I've got 25 years clean and sober. I work with a lot of people. I work in recovery homes, bringing meetings in. I had a 30-year history of addiction and dual diagnosis of mental illness plus alcoholism and addiction which is very, very common. Those of you who have any experience in the field. And I live out in the Midwest. I'm retired, and I'm glad to be here. Already have met some wonderful people. Thank you. So I will be coming from the 12-step perspective and my own experience with addiction and dealing with people, because you become codependent even though you've had the experience. It is very hard not to become part of it. You know what I mean? To get sucked in even though you should know better. So thank you for having me.
It's a
You're muted, Will.
I don't know why that's that. Thank you to everyone that's joining us on Zoom and either on YouTube or going to watch this on YouTube later. If anyone has any questions today, the chat for Zoom and YouTube is being monitored, so please pop them in there and then we can address your questions with the panel. So I'm Will Skeets and I'm your host, your moderator for today. And so to the panel, I say thank you all for being here and supporting me on my passion project. And I would like to open up today's open panel discussion with the first person is Yvette, and Yvette's going to share with us her story through codependency, and then Sue will add to her story, and then we'll have a open discussion on how we can navigate through these kinds of things when they arrive in our lives. Over to you, Yvette.
All right, thank you, Will. So first of all, I'd like to tell myself, it's not putting down anybody, especially the one we love, but I'd like to share the travails that I had, and I hope it could also, I'm sure many of you could relate, and I hope through Facebook, for those who will watch in future, they can at least find a grain of thoughts that could help them get over and have hope that if they are codependent or someone living with an addict, that there's always hope. Okay, so first of all, my experience was a really one of denial, and you cannot. I did not want to admit, because admitting it means, as young as I was that time, and as immature yet, I was in my 20s and with 4 children. So it would mean I made the wrong decision. I have all these things that would come up in having this kind of a situation in a young family's life. So there was denial, and then, but the thing is, you cannot deny it when there's no more job, there's no more house, there's nothing left. So the reality is there, it just hits you right in your face. And then the scary truth, what happens to me? What happens to my children? What happens? And how do I cope with this thing that I don't even know anything about? So it was really something that hit me right smack in my face. And also, like, someone who was idealistic at the time, you're very young and you think you have this perfect life, and then how do you deal with that in this scary
Yvette,
truth has
I don't
confronted
mean to interrupt, but we're getting a little bit of background noise. It almost sounds like we're just getting some feedback. It sounds very windy or something like
okay,
that.
okay.
Could you make a slight adjustment possibly? It
Okay,
almost sounds
hold
like
on.
breathing.
Okay, hold on. Yeah, sorry. So is it better now? All right,
Yes,
thank you.
thank you.
And so when you're confronted with the scary truth as a young mother, as a young wife, the next question is, how about the children? And how about the school? How about the food on the table? And so where am I going? Am I going back to my mother or to my family? But then it would be like the pride because you're young, you have this pride. You don't want people to put you down. They want you. You want them to see you that you have this good life, but then it can't be covered up forever. So it's there, and then you have to face it, and then you have this internal turmoil. What am I gonna do? And so that is the beginning of my story. And then it's a roller coaster of 15 years. And there was also so much, really, so much of that is anchored on faith, on my leap of faith, in my religion. I'm a Catholic, so I really prayed so much for that life. I went to ask help from so many people, not in my family, because it was so hard to ask from the family. You really ask help from others, and they were there. And it was even from strangers. So this thing, this experience in my life, this leap of faith, and then this just fighting and being courageous through the course of time, and having relationships also with people who were undergoing the same thing. I was able to like tell myself that when you accept something and you see that you have this vulnerability, you are not perfect, you're not a superwoman, and then it gives you that openness, and that's when you find healing. That's when you find that you can heal yourself and you can heal the person. And then it was not easy, because after admitting, after realizing, my husband realized and he wanted to change, and there was again a setback. After 5 years, after 10 years, it goes back. There was a relapse, and then you go to the same process, but then you just have to hang on. And so here I am. We're over it. I'm so happy we're over it, and I'm so proud that we went through it, and my children, they're all grown up, and we are all okay. And I am now here sharing as a life coach to others who are undergoing adversity in life, not only through addiction, but in other adversities as well. So thank you for listening to my story.
Thank you, Yvette. And Sue, would you like to share your story?
Sure. Would you humor me and allow the view to be the whole gallery? I prefer looking at everyone, if you don't mind. Okay, so codependency and my story. I was married to an alcoholic who also has a narcissistic personality disorder, and so there's a lot of intertwined things that occur there. I don't want to get too off track. So there's a lot of emotional numbness. I don't have alcoholism in my family at all, which is it's a little unusual that I was in this situation. In fact, I didn't even grow up with alcohol. However, I did grow up in an environment that absolutely nurtured codependency. And that is something that developed in me, that made me, able to, be very susceptible to this type of thing. And I did not know, because I had no experience with alcoholism, I only knew alcoholism to be what you would stereotypically call alcoholism. Someone who drank all the time, was drunk all the time, was this or that. Well, that's so I was actually completely unaware until I broke off our engagement that that's what I was dealing with. And then I was told a really good story, and a story of, it was just a relapse and going to AA. And of course, again, this is a world I don't know. So I'm like, okay, oh, that sounds good. And I got myself in Al-Anon, which has been incredible. But, then like a lot of us, I had a pivotal moment of having to change, of having to make some necessary, very difficult decisions. So part of Al-Anon and part of my recovery is taking that hard look at myself. I didn't want to admit I was codependent. I'm not codependent. I don't know what codependent is. I'm not codependent. And so I would look up the definition. No, I don't fit that. Yes, I do. So I honestly did. I was focused on his behavior, and because he was often angry, I was trying to exercise a lot of control to keep it from my children. And so I was trying to keep a level emotional level home. A lot of the major negativity happened within a month after getting married. Once he had me, then all the mask and everything came off, and it was very difficult few years. But I wouldn't try to control or fix his behavior, but I would have a lack of boundaries because my goal was trying to keep the peace, right? I'm trying to keep the peace in the home, trying to keep the kids from knowing anything, trying to keep everybody okay. And it will drive you absolutely nuts. And then learning how to deal with someone in this situation, I started learning coping skills that weren't necessarily bad, but it caused me to be numb, and I would not have highs and lows. This is another part of codependency. I would have difficulty finding highs, like emotionally. I was taught not to react. So then all of a sudden you stop. Over years, you sometimes forget how to feel. And so that's something you have to relearn. But I felt crazy. I felt a little hopeless. And I would always over worry about the words I used. I had constant anxiety about things in the home, and realized that I didn't realize till Al-Anon that my codependency was so steeped in keeping a life balance and in keeping things at an even keel to keep everybody okay. So that's where my story relates to codependency.
Thank you, Sue. So to the panel, the question I have from Sue and Yvette's stories for you is, why do we care for so long? So if anyone wants to start the conversation, just raise your hand so we can go to you. But yeah, the question is, why do we care for so long in these situations?
Okay.
Yvette?
So, yeah, I'd like to share. Why did I care for so long? Yeah. Number one, it's because when I asked myself that years back, my first question, my answer to myself was, if I were to save a soul from eternal damnation, from going to hell, then I was thinking, why not my loved ones? So because he is my the love of my life. So for me, that was my answer. And then of course it was tested, but it's still the same.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
and Sue, why did you care for so long? Why did you?
I cared for so long for a couple of reasons. One was because of my ignorance over what alcoholism and what the addiction is. And I stayed for so long because I had just gotten married, and that is a huge deal to me, and marriage means a lot to me, and you can't just, what are you going to do? I stayed to the point that I had no choice but to get a temporary protective order. And so I do, of course, have regrets over that, but that's why I ended up staying as long as I did.
So, okay, thank you for that. And so how do we identify in these situations that we are actually codependent? Anyone on our panel today would like to give us some insight on how we would? Alex?
Steve would like to share. He's mentioned in the chat.
But I was trying to send that directly to you, Will, but one of the things that I noticed is that when someone's susceptible, especially for the emotional state of another being, you know, that's where this codependency is. There's an enmeshment, and it's learned from a very young age. So, you know, it's difficult to understand because some of these behaviors seem normal, and that's when you're in a relationship with someone that is either addicted or narcissistic traits, or doing some of these things where you are sacrificing yourself, losing your own boundaries. That usually comes because you don't recognize it from an early age, and it can also go to some self-worth issues and some, you know, this need to help. And so it's a very difficult journey to go, but it's something that can be done. And so it's this realization that you cannot lose yourself in this journey. And that's the one thing that I wanted to mention is it's critical. If you want to help anyone, you have to be whole yourself. And that's the most important thing that we can do. So that's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
And does anyone else like to share their
think
thoughts
Al-
on?
Tommy and then Shelley.
Okay, thanks.
Me?
Yeah, you go
Okay.
next, Shelley. Then we'll call on Tommy.
I think I mean, for me, the answer to this is quite easy. It's love, right? We love the person that is in the state of addiction, or you know, and I'm on the other side of it. And I know, looking at the partner that I had in that relationship, you know, he also knew me before things got really bad. So he was hoping and dreaming that I was going to get better and go back to the person that I was before the addiction really took over. And then also, as the person who was in the addiction, I made a lot of promises that I didn't fulfill and keep, right? Like, so, you know, I'm kind of looking at answering this from both sides, you know, as an addict and as a partner of an addict. You know, we become, it's like you know, the eye of the storm, right? And everybody just wants to get out of the eye, but yet we still love each other. And it's hard, but sometimes we just have to walk away, as hard as that may be. But yeah, like it's hope, right? We all hope for a better version of ourselves or our partner. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. Tommy T, did you want to share something?
Yeah, my experience is a willing suspension of disbelief on the part of the person who's a codependent. Most of us that are alcoholics and addicts are master manipulators, and one of the reasons we're so manipulative is because we believe our own lies, because we can't fuel our addiction and the lives that we live. And at the bottom of almost everyone, unless you're really a hardcore narcissist, is self-loathing. And we cover that with so many layers of self-deceit. And that self-deceit, because we believe it so truly, particularly if you're an empathic or very loving person, you're going to buy into it. And we will tell you this different variations of the same theme of story. It's different this time, I can just tell. You'll see us go to meetings. We might be clean or sober for a few weeks, a month, a few days, maybe a couple of years. But our basic nature hasn't changed. And it is almost impossible to just completely break with that. It takes a very, very strong person. And most people that I have attracted in my life have been very loving people. And it's something that I've had to deal with since then. And I've had that on, I was raised in an alcoholic home. So, you know, I get it. I think that's enough. I don't know if that helped or not.
To Queety.
One reason you stay is, just like Shelley said, is love. And it's a certain kind of love, unconditional. When you in love with an addict or a person who use mind-altering substances, you are in love with the preface, like Shelley brought out. You're in love with the person who was before the addict or the person who's not high. Because the person who gets high changes. They're not the same. You have that unconditional save the world, save the person I love from drowning while they're pulling you down at the same time. So why do you stay? Why do you kill yourself when the addiction is killing the person you love? It's a tie that's unbreakable almost. You're addicted to them. You're addicted to them. People ask the question, why? You're addicted to them. That's why the steps that you utilize in step 4, I know you got to go 1, 2, 3, but step 4 is essential because you have to cleanse and purge yourself out of the addiction of the person who's addicted and you're addicted to. So that would be my reason and my point.
And Mahib, your thoughts on why we stay in these codependent situations?
I was going on the lines of Tommy, but I'll go to the other side now. So everything, I think you guys all have heard me say, everything we do or we don't do serves a need within us. So it's also it's serving a need within us because we don't think we can live without. We feel responsible. We feel we have to save them. At the same time, they being narcissists, become narcissists because what they use you to get what they want to get. They use guilt and shame a whole lot on you and put you in that space where you're in this constant, when they get their thing, and they will be on top and then they will become abusive. But then when they don't have it, then they use guilt and shame. That's their choice of weapon. And you fall for it every time. And then when you step away also, then because they've put that thing in your head so badly through gaslighting and through in training that it hits you. You continuously question your decision that did I move away? What if something happens? Will it be on me? You are in this constant guilt and shame that's eating you up. So you come back. And as Shelley said, hope. You always hope, but this hope is actually more for this fake fantasy that they have built and put in your head, of a fantasy that even they don't believe in. So they're living in a fake fantasy and they've brought you into that fantasy, and you have this shared fantasy that goes nowhere. And now you don't know where to go. And living in this for so long, you simply don't have an identity. So without it also, you don't know where you're going, who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So you're just sitting in it and going over and over and over.
Yeah.
Until something really hits you that no, that's not it. And then after the person passes away or something, then you go through another. That I'll share later more on that. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Mahib. And Maitri, what would you like to add before we go into our next section?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Today I got an inquiry that one person has written that I broke up with my girlfriend because I disagree with her unhealthy lifestyle regarding addiction. So is there any chance that compassion is going to work out?
Okay, well, I think that will be covered in boundaries and stress. So moving on to our next section today, we're going to be talking about the boundaries and stress, the emotional roller coaster of the caretaker. Now, having been a caretaker, I can actually say, yes, it is a massive amount of being on a roller coaster, because you would one moment have one person, and then the next moment, because they've been feeding their alcohol addiction during the day, you will find out you're being dropped into a great big trough of pain and despair that you're trying to fathom your way through it. I was not the best person at setting boundaries, and that until towards the very end, but that's why I'm going to throw out to the panel, how do we set these boundaries in these situations when we're dealing with the addicts in our lives? How do we set boundaries? How do we, as Maitri said, do we make compassionate boundaries?
One of the things that come up, Will, is that if we don't grow up in a family where we've learned how to set boundaries, where it's not modeled properly, something will seem foreign to us. We won't have a comfortable feeling with the boundaries. So Maitri shared that she received a post from somebody that said that I believe it was what you said, is the person was going to break off the relationship because they did not like the stance on addiction. Is that correct? Was that what you had asked? That's a boundary. That's a boundary. That's somebody that recognizes a value, a belief that they have that's more important than the relationship. I mean, it's a where we get into problems is that people that have boundary issues tend to not have good modeling as far as setting boundaries. And so there might be modeling of enmeshment, there might be modeling of codependency. And the important thing is when we start learning to set these boundaries, it's like a child learning to walk its first few steps. It may seem awkward. It may seem like we're doing the wrong thing. It may seem like we're being mean or bad, or we might have all these judgments. But the thing is we need to start finding the value of noticing where it is that we are hurt, where it is that we're feeling bad about something, so that we can draw that line so we quit feeling so bad. If you're in a relationship with somebody and you feel bad, then you're going to feel bad. And so it's noticing that, and it doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. It's just noticing when that interaction is not something that you're comfortable with and starting to speak to it. And in the beginning, it's a little bit awkward, but in the end, you get better at it.
So, Ali, would you like to add something?
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, I'd like to follow on from Steve's point. Once we've got past this meta programming that comes from our upbringings, the thing that you need most in order to set a boundary is clear communication. And the thing that is often forgotten about boundaries is that you then have to enforce them. And there's a difference between setting a clear boundary and explaining in a calm and compassionate manner to somebody that if your behavior is X, I am going to do this, which is probably stop communicating with you, and just completely throwing your hands up and saying, right, that's it, I'm done. Because when you put that barrier in the way instead of a boundary, you lose the ability to offer compassion to that person and to offer anything meaningful into their recovery.
Thank you, Alan. Lisa Marie Brown.
Hi. I'm just going to go back a bit on what Tommy was saying initially with regards of what comes out in alcoholism and the communication and the reality of them creating stories. Quickly, in my position, I'm currently living with an alcoholic, but by choice. I can't get into the backstory at the moment. But because it's by choice, I've had to set boundaries, and it is actually my first time encountering alcoholism or living with an alcoholic. So everything that you were speaking about, it's coming up for me. And in my case, I've had to create a boundary by actually saying nothing, which is quite interesting because what I'm hearing is that you're saying, you know, say stop, or you communicate with the person about what are your needs or dislikes or all those things, boundaries that you put into place. But in my case, I have to just not say anything because I'm in a situation where I'm not sure if I say something, if it would make things worse, or if I say something, if it would make it better. So I have a question for your question, which is how do you deal with that when you're in a situation like mine where you really don't know what to say? What do you say?
Okay, well, Alec raised his hand.
First of all, Lisa Marie, I would say that opting to say nothing is more an action of denial than it is of setting a boundary. And that is something that you could work through in any number of different ways. But if you're in a position where you are treading on eggshells and you're not comfortable being around that person and their behaviors, that really, to me, is the red flag to say that you either need a clear boundary or you need to decide to be out of the situation. I hope that lands okay.
It does. My reason for not setting a boundary is not because, meaning not saying something, it's not because I don't want to say something. It's because if I do say something, the reaction that may come out of it may or may not affect me negatively, and I'm not in a position for it to affect me. So that's why I can't say something, but I do want to say something, but can't at the moment.
So my next question to the panel is going from what Lisa Marie has said. So we're setting the boundary, but the reaction is causing us great stress. I know I've experienced that when I had to set the boundaries at the end, and the stress that it caused me was probably some of the biggest stress I've probably felt in my in my whole journey with my husband's addiction. So that's my question to everybody is, when we've set these boundaries and we've identified that boundaries have to be set, how do we deal with the stress and the fallout from having done that, having set those boundaries? Mahit.
Okay. So the first thing that needs to be done is to be brave and making a concrete decision before you take that action, before you put on those boundaries. What are you going to do when that reaction happens? Because if you are acting from a place of fear, if you are afraid that this will happen, this, that happened, and you're becoming intolerant of the distress of that situation that you are thinking about, that might not even happen. And you're becoming distress intolerant, thinking that you're unable to manage that situation that at the moment is might not be even real. So you are putting yourself in a space already in a space of fear. So your boundaries are already fragile. So you need to go with a more concrete, you need to be courageous and make that concrete decision before you put boundaries on, okay, what will you do when things happen? And you will know that you'll manage it. Okay, sorry, thank you.
Okay,
I just wanted to share something before we move on to Sue. I just wanted to share something that's important, that for people that are in a situation in their lives, because we'll have people watching this on a replay, if you're concerned at all about your physical safety or your emotional safety, seek some help. You know, reach out to, there's departments, there's agencies, there are our 1-800 lines. We'll put that in the chat for this, but reach out to the local support within your area if you're in any danger of your own safety or anything like that. So it's very serious. Trust yourself, trust how you feel, and make sure you reach out if that is something that you're concerned about, because take notice of what you're feeling. It's important.
And Sue has her hand raised and she'd like to add something. And then after Sue, we'll go to Tommy T.
I just want to say, and I mean, no offense to anyone. All of these things that we're mentioning are fantastic, but the coming up with a plan and knowing that you can do it, to me, step one is finding support. You've got to have support. Trying to do this on your own is nearly impossible. And coaches are great, but I mean group support. I mean people who are in it, people who are in different places than you, and people who have been beyond you. This is why I have found that, I mean, one very instrumental thing for me in my recovery was open AA meetings, because I've never been addicted to a substance, and I didn't know anything about it. And open AA meetings were where I got to learn from those who are in recovery. Al-Anon for the caregivers was incredibly helpful as well. COVID blew that out. The whole availability for this support was blown out of the water with COVID. I am so thankful for that, because now you don't physically have to go to meetings. You can attend any meeting on Zoom multiple times all week long, whenever you need any support. And I'm telling you all these wonderful things about making a plan and doing this and that. It's great, but the place that you're coming from to try to do that on your own it's nearly impossible. You need somebody, and you need people who also, you need whether you're choosing coaching, therapy, whatever, but you need group support of people who know, and not every country has this. The United States, I feel, does this pretty well compared to a lot of other countries. A lot of countries have help for the addict, but when it comes to those of us trying to make these changes, it is incredibly lonely and difficult. And so that's all I wanted to say.
And Tommy T, you were going to share something with the panel?
Yeah. What I was going to say is when I talked about master manipulators, we will cry, we will rage, we will whine, we will come up with all kinds of incredibly believable scenarios that are just absolute bullshit, and we're very convincing, because I said before, we believe it. And to Queenie, when Sue was talking, both of us looked like bobbleheads. We were going like this because and there are open meetings. I believe Steve at the end of this is going to share some connections with some web pages for Al-Anon, AA, and NA. And there are open meetings, and I love what Sue had to say. In fact, she makes me weep. That we have open meetings here, and there you can go there and meet people, and what you can do is you can connect to what the hell is actually going on, because this is, if you are on the outside and you're involved with this in your life, as you know well, it's absolutely insane and heartbreaking. And thank you for that. I just wanted to add that little bit. We can be so good at it. I managed to control it for years and stayed in marriages that I can't believe they did more than a couple of months with me. What were they thinking? That's it.
So, and Taquiti, what would you like to add?
One thing that I wanted to add is that I do hear narcissistic personality disorder. I hear those traits and things like that. But I have missed one thing. When you're thinking about addiction, CODA is another program that is offered through Al-Anon and NA. CODA is a codependency program that helps you get through the different addiction understanding. It's in harmony with Al-Anon, but codependency is so prevalent. Let me explain this to you, and it's only take 30 seconds. The one thing you got to understand is love bombing. If you're familiar with narcissism, you understand love bombing. An addict will love bomb you, romance you, just like Tommy said, they will romance you just to get their first love. You know who their first love is? Their high. So let me explain that to you again. CODA is another formation of a meeting that gives you the help that you need. Get to a CODA meeting, an Al-Anon meeting. If you're not familiar with it, go to an open meeting. If you're in danger, because these meetings will help you find a way to get you through and get you out. Remember, love bombing, we talking about gaslighting. Love bombing comes first. Love bombing comes first. Before you get to the gaslighting, you're going to get love bombed by addict. And that's my piece on that.
Thank
Oh,
you,
by the way,
Preeti.
I'm gonna post a book. We're talking about boundaries. I'm gonna post a link to a book called Boundaries. That's a book that you're gonna love.
Perfect. I think that's fantastic. And I just want to throw back to Sue to give us a little bit more information on the difference between open and closed meetings for those of us that are partners of currently of addicts or have had them in our lives, because I think it's important that we differentiate between the two.
Thanks. I try to keep in mind that not everybody knows what this means or that means, and some of us really do. An open AA meeting, AA and NA are Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous, and those are for the people who are in recovery from their addiction. There are closed meetings and there are open meetings. The open meetings are ones that anyone can attend. Closed meetings are for the addicted in recovery only. There are in trying to understand what alcoholism is, and open AA meetings, they were at least as vital to me as Al-Anon. And Al-Anon is for friends, family, and anyone affected by someone's addiction, currently, past, whatever. And you go through this, and CODA, Codependency Anonymous, same, all under the same, AA Al-Anon group. You go through the steps, which anybody, I don't care who you are, I don't care if you have none of these issues or think you don't, the 12 steps are amazing for anyone willing to do that kind of work and reflect on yourself. It is hard work, and you do it with a sponsor, and you are accountable to someone. And it is, I think, also a wonderful coaching tool once you've gone through it yourself and you know what it is. You have to go through it yourself first, because you can't sponsor or be a coach to someone without having done that yourself. And it is hard work, and it is tough, because being the victim of someone of someone's addiction, it's hard to realize that, oh gosh, I've got unhealthy behavior, and I've got unhealthy parts of me, flaws and problems that have caused me or allowed me to get in this situation. So it's all about, you realize, man, no victim mentality here. I have to take some personal responsibility, and we're all responsible for our inner growth. But if you have any questions, either in the chat, you can ask any of us that either are on any side of this, or contact any of our emails up here, and we'll explain anything to you if we use terms and forget how to define them for you.
Thank you, Sue. So is there any other questions that anyone has for the panel? The links that are in the Zoom chat here will be shared within the YouTube playback video so that anyone there can look up those links and find themselves some assistance. Or if you resonate with anyone on the panel that's actually speaking today, please take note of their email addresses, and so that you can reach out to them, because going through these kinds of situations when we are caught up in this it's full of darkness, it's full of hardship, it's full of heartbreak, it's full of questioning yourself. So after having been through the first two sections where, you know, why do we care for people so long that we're codependent on, and then creating our boundaries and stress, how do we bring emotional freedom forward? So I would like Alec and Shelley to unmute and share their stories with us, and then we'll go to Dekriti to share her story about how we find emotional freedom in these kinds of situations, or how we advise other people that are in this situation for emotional freedom. Over to you, Alec and Shelley.
Thanks, Will. I think the first thing for me around emotional freedom is it has to have an element of self-direction. So whenever I think of or make a statement around my own freedom, it is an I statement. I have to be bigger than the story that I tell myself about the events that are going on in my life. And I have to recognize that my history does not define me. It prepares me for whatever else is ahead of me. Somebody said to me quite recently that we have all survived 100% of our worst days so far. And without moving into the area of grief recovery yet and suicide, that is true for everybody that is here now, everybody that is listening on the replay. One of the great burdens to get past are these elements of shame and guilt. And I know you wanted me to mention a couple of things from the kind of paid first responder perspective. And I can tell you that I have genuinely had to move out of the way somebody who was trying to explain the story, what they considered to be an accurate and true version of the events that had led to this person's overdose. And this person is in need of full resuscitation. And before I can get into the house, I've got this person trying to explain to me that it's not as bad as it looks, and it's not been going on for this long. And that shame that they're trying to protect and that they are trying to dispel is so deep and so painful for them to have somebody come to the house, come to their home, whether it's a squat or a den or a family home, and have this all revealed. You know, you could go into an otherwise spotless house, but you go into the addict's room and you're going to find all sorts of paraphernalia, and people will try and tidy up before they call the emergency services. And that is a burden that once you've become a journeyer on this path of freedom and self-discovery, that is very, very difficult to get around. So first and foremost, as Mahib has said many times in the past, it takes courage, and then it's about being bigger than our beliefs and believing that we can do better and more. Shelley, would you like to?
Sure. So yeah, my name is Shelley, and I'm an alcoholic. And when I stopped lying to myself that I could drink socially, when I could use substances socially, when years went by, when I tried so many different things to control it, my world changed with step one, when I accepted that I was an alcoholic, that I was powerless over alcohol and drugs, and my life had become unmanageable. I've always said that for everybody that looks different. I believe that we all stop digging at different times. And unfortunately, some of us go 6 feet under. My drug story is different than my alcohol story. My drug story, it was one of those experiences where I literally like saw where my life was going, and I saw bottom, and I didn't actually have to hit it. With alcohol, it was different. For me, with alcohol, I was a suicidal blackout. And I had to, for me, my story is I had to, if I wanted to live, I had to bury my best friend, my lover, the person that I had, not the person, the thing that I had depended on for so many years and thought was good. And I literally had to grieve it. So when I went to treatment, I literally grieved the death of alcohol and never being able to touch it again, be with it, to taste it, to embrace it, to honor it, to celebrate it, to grieve, like all those things, right? That was, for me, that was my experience. And with the emotional freedom from that also came knowing what the hell I felt. I mean, I was in addiction from the very first time that I touched and put alcohol in my mouth. I believe I was an alcoholic. Everyone's story is different. My story, the first night I drank was one of the worst experiences of my life. And the next weekend I went out and did the same thing. Insanity, right? Well, that's how I lived the next 25 years. But so because I started at 13, I never knew emotions. I repressed everything. I never dealt with anything. So emotional freedom for me came 8 years ago, when I started doing check-ins. And at the treatment facility I went to, we called it MEPS. And it was mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and social. Since then, in the last 8 years, I've really worked with some people, and everyone kind of seems to get mental and emotional mixed up. Mental is what you're thinking, emotional is what you're feeling. So I renamed it. I'm like, I'll rename it. So I renamed it STEPS. Okay. So spiritual, thoughts, emotional, physical, and social. And social's there because when we're deep in addiction, or even when we're deep in someone else's addiction, because this happened to my partner with my ex-husband, is that he didn't socialize anymore and he didn't go anywhere because he didn't want to take the drunk. Right? So his social life got depleted too, as well as mine, because I was like hiding in the alcoholism. So emotional freedom came for me when I finally admitted step one, and I started the healing journey of figuring out who I was, what I liked, how I felt, who I even liked, and it's hard, it's work, but for me, honestly, I try and keep it simple, and I've said this before, like for me, my affirmation, my intention every morning is to put my head in the pillow sober, to go to bed that night sober. whatever happens in those 24 hours, if I have to reach out for somebody, if I have to go and take a breather, if I have to go to a meeting, if I have to do whatever it takes to go to bed that night sober, and keep it simple. And I've lost people in sobriety, and it's opened the door for new people to come in. And with the boundaries and stuff too, like, boundaries are so hard when you've just been like this antenna letting everybody in, right? Like, and boundaries are so hard, but they're so important to that emotional freedom, that freedom of knowing that you're taking care of yourself. Like, you can take care of yourself like you would your child. That's one thing I learned, is I need to start talking to myself like I would my neighbor, or I would my child. Right. And but yeah, boundaries are hard. And when it comes to living with somebody and taking, being a partner, it's different than watching a friend go through addiction. The boundaries that are created are different when it's your partner versus like a friend. But they're also, I think, so important. In sobriety, that's what I had to make, was boundaries. It's people, places, and things. So I had to decide what my boundaries were, and when I was going to be tempted, and and how far I was willing to tempt myself. And I was not willing to tempt myself. So I just avoided. I avoided the places that were going to bring in any temptation. I'm like Cinderella, if I'm, it might not be midnight, but if I'm feeling like I'm going to get in trouble, I'm out of there. So yeah, it's, I'll be honest, and I'll end with this, is we just got back from being away, and it was so hard. Two of my program facilitators who were there for me 8 years ago when I was at treatment are back on the streets, back using. And it was so hard, to watch. And, I have another best friend since kindergarten, and she's way further than I thought. And this was a really hard trip. And this event has come at a perfect time for me, because this, it's I'm going to take something here and take it in and embrace it. But the disease of addiction, that's what it is. It's a disease. It's not because people don't love us. It's not because they're weak. It's not because it's a disease. It's an obsession of the mind. And if we're not using, we're thinking about using, and it's just, but yeah, I thank you all so much for being here and welcoming me. And yeah, I just thank you so much. I'm honored. Yeah.
Thank you, Shelley, because there was something that you said in that completely resonated with me, and that was the shame. And I had stopped my social life for many years because I was terribly embarrassed that my partner was such an alcoholic and couldn't be trusted in a social situation. But it's not about me. It's about now what Alec has to add to our conversation.
I shared a moment ago about the professional element of working in the emergency services and dealing with addiction. What I didn't mention is that, and Tommy brought this up in the chat, about the number of first responders who don't complete their tours of duty healthy, something that he's experienced himself. I'll let him share that. But I'm 19 years, 8 months and 1 day sober today from alcohol, and I'm 15 years and 3 days from IV drug use. That's something that I was doing alongside a professional career as a first responder, as a coping mechanism. And I would go to work 100%, and people would compliment me on my focus and my dynamic nature in response to things. And at home, I was an absolute shell. I lost, Tommy said in the chat that you can count on these sorts of careers being worth 2.5 marriages. Well, I will second that. And one of the hardest things I think that ever happened for me was having sat and watched When a Man Loves a Woman with my then wife. And there's a part where Andy Garcia's character has gone to Al-Anon. And somebody shares in the meeting that they only knew what their day was going to be like when they knew what their partner's day had been like. And I could not make eye contact with my partner. And I went off to bed ahead of her, and I came out and I found her in tears on the landing. And she said, that's my life. You know, I don't know how to be until I know how you are. I don't know whether you're going to have a good day and you've come home and you've taken, 19 kilos of heroin off the street, or you've lost someone, you've lost, when I was a police officer, you've lost the suspect. When I was a paramedic, I'd lost 6 people in a multiple car pileup due to a drunk driver. And it's one thing to be able to deal with these things professionally and put your game face on. It's another thing entirely for your family not to see a game face. There is no persona. It's pure anima, and we are the people that we genuinely purport to be. And it isn't until you can reach that stage, certainly for me, it wasn't until I reached that stage that I was able to say that I was recovered. Thank you.
Thank you, Alec. That's a very powerful thing that your partner at the time said, and that's exactly how you do feel for anyone out there, is you sit and you wonder how their day was before you actually go, yes, it's been a good day. So Marcella, what would you like to add to the discussion?
So thank you. I just would like to acknowledge that has been beautiful and so much courageous to watch all of you to open up and being vulnerable. So it's really important to acknowledge that. The other thing that I would like to talk about is when Shelley had shared her story, what was something that have really connected with me is the fact that she mentioned about she had to rephrase certain things that it didn't resonate with her path and her journey. So it's really important in anything that we do in life, be able to adjust things. And if we need to get rid of labels or label in a different way that suits us and our healing process, that's extremely important. She also mentioned about grief, and grief has been mentioned here a couple of times. That's where my experience come into place. And I love the fact that she mentioned that the rebirth, and it is like this. And it's a process that is a rebirth, not just for the person that is trying to find themselves and their new identity and find that awakening, for life and what is life will be for them on their own terms going forward. Because that's exactly where that step that you take to make the choice that you had enough of that version of you that doesn't suit you anymore. And you want to be that better version of yourself, and you're still on that path to trying to figure out. And please don't feel scared, because there will be people that will come into your life that they can give you the love that you need. But please be vulnerable to be able to share what are your needs, because no one can do mind reading, not even the people that is around you, your own family and your friends. So be vulnerable to share and say, what are my needs going forward? Thank you for hanging around and be supportive, and trust that there would be a time that I would be where I am now, that is willing to be that better version of me and find how this better version of me I want to look like, not what everybody else wants. Is this version of me that will resonate with what I believe going forward, what I want in my life, the people I want in my life, and what are the gifts and beautiful stories I can take from whatever's the challenges that I have faced, that I can change and be able to inspire other people in the future. But just never lose that trust within yourself. That's all I always want to share the knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcella. So now I'm going to ask Takriti to share a piece of her story and how she found herself in the situation she is now and found her emotional freedom.
Okay, good evening, good morning, good day. My name is Takwiti. I am healed. I am healing. My journey started when I was 5 years old. I walked in on my mom being cut up with acid being poured on her. She was bubbling in blood. The day that they took her out, I was molested by a family member. So I was not fed properly while she was gone. By the time I was a certain age, my family sold marijuana. So my journey really started with smoking marijuana. Then by the time I got like 14, I started smoking something called Sherm. If you're unfamiliar with it, it's Sherm. These are the terms that they use. They use Sherm, they use water, they use mint leaf. These are the different terms that they use for embalming fluid being dipped with a cigarette or marijuana cigarette dipped. It gives you the effect of angel dust. If you've ever heard of angel dust, that's what it was. I did these drugs until I got 20 to heal the pain that I was going through. I was a violent child, violent. I was being bullied at home, being molested on the daily by my grandfather. So I was also being molested by a family friend, and I was being molested by an uncle. So what do you do to safeguard your pain? You fight everybody else, right? You get high to, get rid of the pain. That's what I did. I never did cocaine or heroin, but that doesn't mean that one drug is better than the next. All drugs are mind-altering substances, and I accept them as what they are, as it says in step 1. I was powerless over my situation. So did I live in that? I stopped getting high when my son turned 1 year old. My son is 30 now, so I'm clean 30 years. I'm clean 30 years from the mind-altering substances that they call embalming fluid. What I have done is I did not let my pain continue, although I continue to be in a mentally abusive marriage. I continue to elevate. I believe that darkness is not a bad thing. I believe darkness is your time of growth. I believe darkness is where you grow. If you put a seed in the dirt, it's dark. So it has to die in the dirt. You have to kill those substances, those cravings in that death. I don't consider it death. I consider it a transformation. Transforming from what you are to what you're going to become. A flower doesn't bloom until it grows in the dark. It grows in the daytime. When you see it, it has already went through the struggle growing its roots. And that's what I did. I grew my roots in the dark. I stood there. I became a mother. All my children graduated from high school. And I consider I homeschooled my children. I did the things that it took to become a mother. Did I still smoke marijuana occasionally? I did marijuana in the process. So I'm not completely 30 years clean, I'm gonna say that. but I am 30 years clean from the hardest drug that I ever did. What I do now is I work through the pain by helping others who have been emotionally abused through their emotional trauma. Emotional trauma is one way that addiction lives. It lives through the emotional pain for people to try to cover that pain. So what I do is I do my step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and I work them on a daily. Can I help everybody? No, I can't. People, places, and things are something that you have to change. You have to change the people that you are around. You have to change the things that you do and the places that you go. Today is the people that I'm here with. These are the new people. The things that I do is I encourage people and I work around other people who encourage people. The places that I go are places that are encouraging, motivating, beautiful. The lake, the places that help me meditate, concentrate, and build. We are at the point in our life. I just lost my brother to addiction and overdose. My brother died from overdosing on dope. So when I tell you, if you need some help, don't run from it. Apply your step 1. Admit that there's a problem because there's no healing without admittance. Thank you. My name is Taquiti Cross. I am healed.
Thank you, Takriti, for that very powerful share. Now, Steve.
I just wanted to share, just for anyone that's listening, Taquiti shared a very powerful story, and we need to make sure that we separate from our identity of the addiction. So when she's speaking about that, it's about the habit, right? The death to the habit, the death to these actions that we're doing. And it's important to know that we are, you're not your addiction. There's a separation there. It's not who you are. So that's very important to remember. And if anyone is having any thoughts of, self-harm or anything like that, please reach out to a medical professional. That's serious, and just get the help that you need. So we want to make sure that we're conscious of that. So thank you so much.
And I would now like to ask Jess Shelley.
Yeah, I just wanted to add I thanks Steve for bringing that up, because I think that is very important for people to recognize the separation between, and even early in recovery, I think people struggle with being defined as only that. And I just wanted to share too, this is just for people who are maybe in early recovery, or they have a partner in early recovery, and maybe they're struggling with how to maybe share or tell, or even when it comes to alcohol is so prevalent. I mean, it's in every pub, it's at every corner, it's everywhere, right? So one thing that I started doing, if I didn't want to share my story, is I would just say I'm allergic, and it's as easy as that. And then nobody's, because being a woman, people are like, oh, you must be pregnant. Well, no, I'm allergic. I can't drink alcohol. And sometimes it's just as easy as that, because people start, if you say I'm an alcoholic, then sometimes it just opens a door and you don't want to go down that door, and that's your choice. So just know that it's okay to share your story, and it's not okay to share your story, and that's your choice.
That's very true. That's very, very true. And having been, before we go over to Tommy, having been the partner of an alcoholic who, as I said at the beginning, passed away 2 years ago, and that after Tommy's spoken, I'd like to touch on the shame and the grief that came from that, and the behaviours that people create for themselves during that process of finding their emotional freedom at that sort of stage when that happens. So Tommy, what would you like to share?
I would like to thank Taquiti for her courage to share that. And her story in AA and NA. I swear to God, it's like 65 to 70% of the ladies in there, particularly addicts. The main indicator of a future in addiction is usually childhood trauma or trauma later on, including my wife, a victim of incest with her father and all horrific abuse. And I grew up with a lot of shit in my life, let me tell you, and I passed a lot of that on because it was the norm. One thing I was going to say, and I wanted to say earlier, and I talked about it when we did something before, when you're dealing with us in the throes of our addiction, I'm talking at a guy I sponsor said that he woke up in the morning with an animal chewing at his brainstem, and we literally are operating at the level, emotional level of reptiles, because we have one driving force in our life. And everything else is a tool to get there. That was my experience, and I've seen that experience with others. So when you have that guilt and shame, know that you're not dealing with a whole individual. This is not about you. You did not create this. And I just wanted to share one thing. The difference between someone like me is the minute I got my first taste, whether it was sniffing glue, drinking whatever I was using, the first taste I got, I was like, oh, hell yeah, this is what I'm going to do from now on, because it filled every hole in me. Someone who doesn't have the body chemistry or whatever's required for that doesn't have that experience. Oh my God, I'm never doing this again. Or I'm going to do it till I'm like 22 out of college and then I'm going to live life. I'm not going to make this a life path. I don't know if any of that helped, but sometimes, like Sue was talking, explaining the other side of this might be helpful to folks so that they don't experience that guilt and shame. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'd like Mahib to talk about navigating through grief in a moment, because that was something that I didn't understand when I was standing there looking down at my passed away husband, and I went into complete emotionless shutdown mode. I didn't know how to navigate the grief. I didn't have any sort of thing. And there are still people in my life that do not know the full story of his addiction. But my husband got sober after 16 years of solid drinking, because he was basically given 3 months to live due to his liver eroding. His liver regained itself, and it was 4 years sober. And like Shelley had said earlier, thought he could go back to social drinking. Well, no, basically the liver started eroding again, and life started spiraling out of control again, to the point where he assisted his own heart attack at the end with a cocktail of alcohol, sedatives, and anti-craving medication. So that information came to me 18 months after the fact, when I think, for me, the universe told me I was emotionally stable enough to be able to deal with it. But yeah, I'd like Mahib to take the floor now to talk to us about navigating through grief when we're going through these situations.
Thank you, Will. Thank you, Takwiti, for sharing that story. Wonderful. Thank you for all being here. Before I start with the navigation, something that Marcella said about rebirth. Whenever we go into the situation like this, basically an expectation is broken. Something that we assumed will happen didn't happen. So when we have created that, we have created a self of ourselves in that place. And with that thing not being there, that self of ours die. As that we lose ourselves, that self of ours die, it has to give rebirth. It has to be born again. And that is where the whole lot of pain comes from. And at the same time, in that space, we do not see any future. It's either unclear or it's negative. And we are in this space of nowhere. But that's where when we are giving rebirth to ourselves, because we live based on what we get, the picture that we get in our head is how we understand things. If you do not have a future self of yourself in your head, you just simply don't know where you're going. Everything makes a meaning and makes sense if you can only get the picture in your head. So we are in a constant process of death and rebirth. And that's how we learn. But it's painful. And a lot of times we avoid it because we are mostly distress intolerant. So now, when someone passes off and through such conditions, we are in a different stage. It put us in a lot of shock. We get physical reactions, we have emotional reactions that we have never had before. And it comes differently with different people, especially based on different relationships that we have had with these individuals. So the physical reactions of grief, trauma, and loss may include aches and pain and especially back and chest, changes in sleep pattern and fatigue, feeling paralyzed, unable to function, changes in eating pattern, lack of appetite, nausea, and you get all these physical reactions. And then you'll also have emotional reactions where you will be in shock, in disbelief, you'll get anxiety because now suddenly you need to create a new future self of yours without this person, or you have to again give birth again to yourself, and there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of rage where you don't know where to direct, so you direct it towards yourself. You feel urge to hurt yourself. You also go into depression because you can't pinpoint what you are actually sad about, because you don't want to say or direct it toward that person you have lost. Then, of course, there's sadness, feeling overwhelmed, shame, guilt, and you go through a lot of loneliness, and of course, then you find avoidance methods where to find peace. So you can cut off from people, or you go and keep yourself too busy, and whatever works for you. Some people actually start drinking. Some people actually go and take drugs, and whatever avoidance method that works for you. Some people hurt themselves, and some people hurt others. So you go through emotional, physical reactions and emotional reactions. Then now the problem is that this is also stressful, and every time you think about the past, you keep on you're in this guilt and shame space where you think, did I do enough? Could I have done more? Is it because of me? How could not I see this? Why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? You're in this constant guilt and shame space within yourself. So And this is all really, really hard. You're just not letting your body feel what it needs to feel. And that takes a lot of courage. So you're being distress intolerant, allowing to feel what you need to feel. Find a space where you can openly talk and take it all out and actually direct the sadness, the pain towards that specific thing that is the loss of this person, and say it. That is really, 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 really important. And
okay,
I don't have much time. How much time do I have?
We're at the bottom of the hour, and we're got one question that I'd like to put out to the panel. That was
Just one more thing, Will, before I end. One
Okay,
last
Mahib.
thing. The problem is people around us do not allow us to grieve. Everybody is in a hurry for you to get better, or just move on. Everybody is in a move on mood. There is no moving on. You have lost someone. You have lost someone you love. You shared your life. Real or fake, whatever it is, it was something. For you, it was real. It was real in your head. And there is no specific time. Grieve as long as you need to grieve. There is no, it is part of you. And from time to time, it will come up. So grieve. And everybody who's telling you enough or move on, it's only for their own benefit. Or take a pill, you'll be okay. No. That's for their benefit. Because they don't want to deal with you. They don't want to listen to your same story again. Or move on already. There is no moving on. Grief as long as you need. Take your time, work on yourself. It is part of you. We lose someone who meant something in our life, and that's painful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mahib, for your thoughts and your insights on grief there. Now, we had a question pop up in our Zoom chat box. Rashmi has asked, how does she assist someone that has identified during COVID that they've become addicted to the drinking due to their loneliness? Would anyone like to give us give Rashmi a brief answer, and then we can move on to our next section? Anyone? Takriti or Steve?
Okay, one thing is you got to know if they're willing to get the help, because there's so many avenues, like Sue brought out, that there are now avenues where you could do Zoom meetings on AA, Al-Anon, CODA, and NA. You got to see if they'll go to a meeting, because that's a hard step for an addict to even admit that they got a problem. So trying to force them to get help is going to make them rebel even further. So I always think about, you cannot help a person change to their desire to change become greater than their desire to stay the same. So when you think about that, are they willing to even step foot in a meeting? They might not have to go to a live meeting, but fighting to even get them to just one meeting, just ask them in a sincere way, because they're manipulators. So you got to become a master manipulator yourself and find out how you can manipulate them to get to a meeting. What would be the nicest thing, the kindest thing that you could love bomb them and to get them to a meeting? So that would be a highly recommendation for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Takriti. And also, Rashmi, there is an AA service in India. I think I shared the link yesterday with Maitri. So that's probably a good way to to go, and probably the best thing would be, as Takriti has said and Sue has said, that they need to want to make this change. So speaking now, we've been on a bit of an interesting journey. I hadn't realised it would make myself emotional today. But now we're into our last section, moving forward. How did I move forward? I know how I moved forward. I had to do a lot of rebuilding of myself internally and finding out who I was again and what my strengths were and what I was capable of. And so my question to the panel is, what was your catalyst to moving forward? Alec?
It was that rock bottom bounce, not the hitting the bottom, the bounce, and then seeing it coming, rushing back up again. And that will look different for every person. And some people's lows, understandably, will be much lower than others. For me, I'd been injured at work. I was suffered a very serious neck injury, and I'd gone to the doctor and I was prescribed some painkillers, and they are contraindicated for people with an addictive nature. But it was a weekend, I was in agony, and I decided that, okay, I would take them. And everything that I had built collapsed. I realized as soon as I'd taken the first of them that they had to be gone, and they were no good for me. I went through what we have in the UK, the yellow label system of warnings, recognized that they were contraindicated, and that depending on how I wanted to view it, I could have counted that as a relapse. There then was a whole heap of stuff that came home to roost. I was off work injured. I'd been in a house where I wouldn't open any of the curtains, and this had been going on for a long time. And because I was working with people who thought that was a completely normal way to spend your days off, staring at a blank wall with all of the curtains in your house closed in the darkness, I kind of took that as a normal way of coping, believing that that was okay. And I reached that point where I genuinely, honestly didn't think I could go on. And I have a lot of experience with medications and toxins, and no word of a lie, I concocted a brew and I was prepared to take it. I did that while my son was in the living room, the other side of the wall. And that was then the time, the place where I realized that if he had found me, if I'd have taken that route, that would have stayed with him forever. You know, we talk in ecology a lot about the ripples that we can create with helping people, but oh boy, can't we make some ripples for people in a bad way too? And that was the catalyst for me. That was when things really turned a corner. Thank you.
You're muted, Will.
Sorry. So what was your catalyst to moving forward? And how can we...
My pivotal moment, I think we all tend to have one. My dad had passed away June 30th of 2020. And then I guess he and I had kind of separated in the home prior to that. And my girls were like, when are you going to do something? When are you going to do something? There is nothing he wanted more than for me to take my focus off my dad. And I told the girls they were going to have to sit tight because I wasn't going to do that. And his funeral was in July. And by September 1st, his son, who had come to our house for the first time, we found out how scared he was. And I realized, then I found out my girls were having their bedroom doors locked in fear. They were scared to leave me at home alone with him just to go to McDonald's. That's when I knew I had to do something. So I got the temporary protective order, and I had already been in Al-Anon, but that was my pivotal moment that really, so I was coping up until then, but this is what started my healing and recovery. And I was grasping at everything, guys. It was Al-Anon, it was open AA meetings. I was in therapy, and I found that I was struggling with therapy because the person really didn't have any idea what I was going through, or could not be of much help other than to vent to. So I went, since I had the alcohol part taken care of with AA and Al-Anon, I then sought out, I was determined to find a narcissistic abuse recovery therapist. And I found exactly what I needed. And she was a therapist / coach. And I was with her for quite a long time. We ended up having, if any, you may just want to, I don't know if you want to jot notes, because I know there's no time for me to explain what some of this is, but we went through what was called an EMDR therapy. I needed that for the panic attacks, for having to go to the temporary protective order trial. And it was incredibly, incredibly helpful. And it is a therapy that really does help your brain resolve some trauma that has, and some situations, doesn't even have to be big ones, that where your brain stopped processing, didn't get through the entire processing of the entire trauma or problem. Anyway, that was also another pivotal thing. So and the 12 steps, the looking inside, that you've got to take personal responsibility, and you've got to realize that this was not what was done to you was not your fault, but you have work to do. You have to be able to, I don't want to say anything that sounds insensitive, you know what I mean? So, but we're unhealthy as well. And just, if nothing else, from, the way we have our own stuff from growing up and our trauma, and that we have to heal from, that helped get us into where we are, and into some of the situations we're in, and the coping during it, to heal from. So that's my story.
And now I think I'm going to ask Taquiti, what was her catalyst to moving forward, and how she keeps herself moving forward through now 30 years of recovery, and then maybe some others that are in recovery too that have joined us today. How do they keep themselves moving forward? What is their thing? So Taquiti.
Hello, everyone. I just want to thank you all for the opportunity to share and grow and continue to heal. What do I do to move forward? What was my pivotal point? My children. Most people have more things than, I don't know. Some people don't even care that their children is in their life doing their addiction. And thank God, my children was mine. What do I do now? I fall every day. I go one day at a time. I know that there's no perfect person, but I know that I'm imperfect. What do? I read, I study, I did the therapy. I tried to commit suicide over 150 times. This may be one of those moments, Steve, you really want to kind of reiterate that, because these are critical times where you have to understand these are pressure points that's going to touch somebody, and pray that they get the message that we're sharing here today. We have made it. We're continuing to elevate. What do? I'm not perfect. I'm going to fall. I'm going to fall forward though. I'm going to move forward. Walt Disney said, we are not the sort that look back, but we are the type that keep moving forward. So by us keep moving forward, I always think about that. Being in the darkness, I always think about growing in the dark. I go to sleep every night. I continue that being in a moment of recovery, whereas I'm building my body, I'm building again. Every time we die in our sleep, we awaken a new person. So what do? My pivotal point was my children. Guess what? I got a new pivotal point, my grandchildren. So every day in life, I continue to grow in life. I refuse to let addiction and addictive behaviors control my life anymore. Or what I want to be addicted to is healing, recovering, and success. And Sue, thank you for bringing up EDMR. That is such an essential program to help healing when you've been traumatized. So with that, I say, continue to grow forward. What do? I read, I study, I practice in coaching. I talk to other coaches. I have moved away from the therapeutic programs and moved into a coaching program that helps me move past pain points. It makes me move past those stations, whereas I will live in that pain, because no longer do I live in the pain. I used to cry when I talked about these. Now I feel empowered, because guess what? My pain is my purpose, and that's what I do. I live in my pain and I turn it into a purpose to help others who are going through the pain, so they can be emotionally well equipped to deal with these situations that we have been traumatized with and brainwashed to make it think that it's okay to live in pain. I no longer live in pain. I no longer live in addiction. I live in healing. No, I'm not an addict. I am healing.
Thank you, Takriti. Now, Tommy would like to share something with everybody.
I'll try to make this brief. I think it was in July of '96. I drove to a state police post with a 3-page suicide letter with a deer slayer shotgun with double-aught buck, put it in my mouth, and I'm used to handling firearms, took the safety off, put it in my mouth, and started to take the slack out of the trigger. And I could feel like this open space, like I was always starting to leave my body. And if you've ever been there, so I heard this clear, small voice, and you can call it whatever you want. And it told me the story's not yet written. And I'm like, huh? And I'm, bullshit, we're doing this. We are doing this shit. No way. And, but the moment it passed, and then I went back, my life changed. I used again, but my clean date is March of '97. I ended up doing 3 years in prison, and it was the most informative, growing time of my life, from 46 to 49. And I met some people in there that have been the most informative and greatest life-changing people. I can feel it running through me now as I'm talking about it. These men taught me to be a human being. These men taught me to be a man. And I don't know, somebody found something in me, found some character in me. And I was just protected from a lot. I was older too, in my late 40s, from a lot of things going on. And after that, my life was never the same. And my life now is based on service. My life now, I'm 71 years old. My life now is to give back however I might be able. Using is not part of my life. But I love what Takita had to say. I still have what we call using behaviors. And I have to always be on guard for those. And when my ego comes in and tries to take over what I call my higher power chooses to use me for this day, including something like this. And I wake up every day grateful that I have an opportunity to make up for my past. Thank you for having me here. I really appreciate being a small part of this. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tommy, for sharing. And I'd just like to reiterate to everybody that's watching this now live or on the YouTube replay, if any time you are in a situation like this and you are having suicidal thoughts and serious self-harm thoughts, please reach out to a helpline that can help you, medical professionals, as we're all coaches here, and that's a big thing that we all like to live by, is that if you are in that situation, then you need to go see the right medical professionals. So that just brings us around to the top of the hour at now, and I think some people, we should all just share our thoughts of what we've heard today, what we've and what we feel. For me, there was something that was said to me yesterday, which I'm going to share, and I think we could probably elaborate on that. Believing that you're alone and that you are the only person that can resolve this situation that you're in is more than likely the most damaging belief that you can continue to hold on to. That was so relevant when I heard that, because for so long I believed that I was on my own. I believed I could fix the situation. And, you know, I've shared with you all the outcome of my situation. And when I heard that, I'm like, you know what? Maybe if I had have shared it with a few people and let a few people in and not hid behind the shame of it all, it would have been a different outcome. So what is it? Does anyone want to add their thoughts as we close the open discussion? Takriti? And then Yvette.
And Shelley.
Shelley
And
wanted,
Shelley.
then Yvette was before me, and then I'll go last. Let them go first.
Okay, Shelley.
Hi. I just want to, so I've heard a lot about shame, and a big thing for me, and I've heard it mentioned here a few times. I remember when I first learned the difference about shame and guilt. And for anybody listening who might not know the difference, I just really want to pass that on. So shame is I've done something bad, and guilt is I am bad. And I never knew the difference. I just always assumed that if you do something bad, you are bad. And there's such different things. And when we're in our addiction, we do a lot of things that we're not proud of. So we just automatically believe that we're bad people. Or there's a lot of people who make judgments on addicts or people with mental health issues, and then they assume they're bad people because of their actions. And I think that's really, it's almost like a person has two brains. They have like a brain in addiction and a brain if they're not using. It's like, it's almost like those two things, right? And Will, I just want to say thank you. I have felt your heart throughout this whole thing, and I still feel your pain. Like it feels like it's still fresh. I know, I think you said your partner was 2020, but I just wanted to say I'm sorry for your loss. And I lost my mom to suicide many years ago, and what you just said is something that I still say to this day. And you know, I wish I would have gotten her friends together And, like if I would have done this and would have done that. And, we wish so many things, but, fate has it a different way for us, I guess. And that's the thing with mental health and addiction, right? It's the shame of it, keeping it a secret, keeping the addiction a secret, the mental health. So I just want to say, let's bring it to the forefront, and all these people here today, people listening, let's take the shame and the stigma away from the addiction, from the mental health, and bring the awareness out there, so we don't have to say shoulda, coulda, woulda. It's just, let's do it. Thank you.
Yvette. Thank you, Shirley.
Okay, so I'd like to thank everyone for what I've learned from the side of the addicts, from grief, and all the other things. Thank you for sharing such powerful stories. So from my side, the one who cared for an addict, what made me do was that there was no term yet that I learned just recently about self-awareness. It was just going back to who I was at that time. I was so young. I was just going back to like, who am I? Who do I want to be? And then my children. Yes, the children were my driving forces. They were my heroes. Until now, they are my heroes because they have grown up to be matured individuals who also help other people going through the same thing that they went through, that they discovered their father going through that the use of the paraphernalia and all. But most of all, it is always going back to each one of us, especially to those who are listening or may listen in the replay. The inner strength is always there. It's never away from us. We just have to be quiet and then find it in ourselves. You don't have to be Superman. You don't have to be anybody. Just be yourself, and you will realize that that strength will be the one that will really propel you to move forward and realize you are a person who is important. You have value. That's what I want to share. Thank you.
And Takriti was next, and then Mahib.
I really appreciate the opportunity to share. My feedback came from everyone. Will, thank you. We have a similar loss. Our mates died. Yours died for one thing. Mine died from COVID in the past year, which bonded us together. And during this healing process, this has really, really been fantastic. The connection of everyone here. I want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to share my story, the opportunity to continue to heal and realize that I'm no longer using darkness as a pain, but as a means of growth and development. So thank you guys for being my new people, my new place, and my new thing to be involved in. Thank you.
Mahib, and then Lisa Marie Brown.
Thank you, Will. I'd like to thank everyone for being here, for choosing to spend their time, something which is the most valuable thing in our lives, to share it with us here. Thank you so much. My last word for everyone, for coaches, for people who are watching and going through this, for people who are going through this addiction, and the caretakers, be kind to yourself, and you will help everybody around. Just be kind to yourself, because you're not helping anyone. You're not reaching out. You're not talking to anyone. So be kind. Thank you.
And Lisa Marie Brown.
I came into the summit with grand ideas of what I would present and how it would turn out. And it so turns out that I was just muted because I couldn't say much. And I couldn't say much because there's so much that you all have said that resonates with me, because I'm in a live situation. So thank you for sharing. And I'm going to use everything that I've learned here today to help me in my journey while I'm in it at the moment. Thanks, everyone.
And Marcella.
So thank you, everyone. Please, everyone that will be watching the recording, do share, because there is very important and touching messages here to anyone. So my final message is never stop believing in yourself and never stop searching for whatever love means to you. And when you find that love within you, you know you are ready to share that love with others. So just be you, be brave, and be love. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Marcella. So that brings us right round to the end of our open discussion today on addiction and overdose. I would like to say thank you to everyone here today for putting in the time. Today would have been my 19th wedding anniversary. That's why I decided to host it on this day, so that the whole process and the whole thing, the situation that I went through and the experiences I learned from it came to light. And I really appreciate you all for sharing my passion project. And I'd like to hand over to Steve now. Thank you.
With that touching share, I'd just like to take a moment of silence just for those that we've lost in this, and especially for your partner, Will, because this is an important topic. And so just take a few seconds, 10 seconds to 30 seconds, and be here, be with those that are struggling, and to send our love and our support. I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank the people that have shared personal stories. The goal behind the Global Summit events is to be better together, to talk about important topics, to share on a level of personal experience, to give others hope. And I think that we've done that today. We've shared some knowledge. We've not come out as experts, but we've come out as people to let people know that they're not alone, that what they're feeling is been felt by others, and that there is a way through, that there's a way out of this. I want to really thank Will for his vulnerability, for his hosting. The job you did today moderating was top notch. We pass this baton to the people that have personal investment in what we do, and this topic is of personal importance to Will. This was a topic of his choice, and we are all here in support of him. So thank you so much, Will, for bringing this. This is a necessary discussion. What we've brought forward today is of real value, and thank you for that. I'd like to also just mention before we go, I'm sharing, if you look at the name on my screen, it says linktr.ee/GS_events. If you go to that link, you'll be able to follow all of the information about the Global Summit events. The topics vary. We bring up a different topic each month, topics that are chosen by the members of the community. And next month in September, we'll be talking about creative ways of taking the stress out of school for students, rethinking education. We have a 24-hour event for Mental Health Awareness Day on October 10th. And we're focusing on positive psychology. We're trying to focus on ways of helping people feel better. November, we've got 2 events. The first one is firm. It's going to be November 13th, which is World Kindness Day. And we're focusing the event around positive psychology and ways to move into a better quality of life. And one of the members has brought up the topic of world, it's focusing on prevention of child abuse, and that's it's a global day on November 19th. We're in just the discussion talks on that, but that one might be a topic that may come forward as well. It's difficult to talk about these difficult subjects, but I think it's important because we're adding a voice to something that we don't know how to talk about. I mean, even within my own family, there has been difficulty in even addressing some behavior. And in the case of our family, someone ended up in the hospital, and there's just stigma about talking about it, and things like that are important to talk about. It's finding a way to breach that subject, because this life is important, and I really appreciate you all for being here. And then the final day is in December. We're going to have a social. We'll have just a get together where we can connect. Every panelist, every person that's on here, if you put your information in on the chat of a way to contact you, an area of support. We're not experts in this field. We're not mental health experts, but we are peer-to-peer coaches. We can help you achieve a goal. That's what our job is to help you move to the next level. It's all about the fact that if you can regulate your own emotions, if you can regulate your own thoughts, we've got a wonderful group of panelists here that can all help you get to the next level. And that's what we do. So thank you for being here. Thank you for making this a special event and a special day. And I would just like you to all please share in the feedback link, the feedback form, what you thought of today, and I'll put that link in the YouTube as well. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here, for sharing.
Thank you all.
Feel free to unmute and just say whatever comes to mind.
Thank you, everyone.
Here's our song and dance.
Do you want to end with I'll end.
We gotta end this on like a party high note. Let's
We will end with the high